Hello, my name is Jay Johnson,
I'm Richard Hansen.
and this is SAM Phase 3 Hard Days. And obviously, it's hip strength, it's core strength, it's hip strength, and then hip mobility. And Dr. Hansen, what do we have going on here in terms of kind of the new exercises in SAM here?
So we're increasing the plyometric activity a little bit with this. So we'll start out with some skipping in all planes of motion at the hip. So this forward skipping, you'll see we're working a little bit the torso by when he's putting the arm up and down. We're working the posterior and anterior chain by going forward and back. We're working the sagittal plane by going sideways, while all working the stretch shortening cycle at the Achilles. With this one, the skip-skip-lunge, it increases that coordinative activity a little bit more. You're still getting some rhythm of the skipping, but you're adding in a little bit more of that dynamic plyometric activity by adding in the A-skips, by adding in the lunge component, and adding some of that speed.
And then why are we, so obviously the wave lunge is pretty easy to follow, but he's going to run out of this. And what's the concept there?
So you're adding a dynamic stretch followed by an explosive activity going straight into a stride. So you're increasing blood flow by doing those dynamic movements, and then we're getting the sport specific activity by that little stride out or that jog out.
Could he be a little lower on these wideouts?
Yeah, Andy has really tight hips, and so him being able to get low with his squat is a little difficult, but if you can hold good mechanics while getting a little lower, that's the ideal. You'll see with some of these, like these speed skater squats, where you're getting a little bit more eccentric motion at the hip. So it's, again, teaching that stretch shortening cycle of some of those stabilizers.
Now, folks, on this one, your toes, mountain climbers, your toes could touch the ground in front of you. This one's not a great angle. See how his foot is coming up by his arm. So this is why we call them singles out as opposed to singles in.
Yeah, and here we're shifting back and forth with the motion at the hip. Again, he could get a little bit deeper with these, but the goal is to work the hip in different planes of motion, this one being a 45-degree plane at that hip, going back and forth.
Okay, core strength. This is going to be some familiar stuff here. Why are we doing things like planks, Dr. Hansen?
We're trying to work the core as a corset, so using it as a functional stabilizer more so than a primary mover. When you're doing stuff like crunches or sit-ups, that's more working it as a primary mover. The stabilization component that the core provides with running, especially at the pelvis and the shoulder girdle, is something that helps improve efficiency and just take a little bit more pressure off of what your movement mechanics might be down in the lower chain. Adding in motion like he's doing here with the arms, what we would be doing with the torso, and then with the legs, challenges that core a little bit more, making you a little bit more of an unstable unit.
Yeah, and with an athlete like this, I mean, what is he, 6'1" or 6'2"?
He's actually 6'4".
Oh, he's 6'4".
He's a big boy.
So is this for the people watching this that are a little taller? This is a little more challenging, is it not?
Yeah, especially this one that he's doing in particular, where he's doing the back plank. That's really challenging on the hamstrings in particular. I'd like his hips a little bit higher with this, but the height that he is a little bit more difficult.
And this one might be new for most people, the forward and backward. Is there anything they should be feeling here that might be different?
I mean, it's again the stretch shortening cycle at the Achilles and the calf, while still trying to keep the body in a straight line.
Great. And people who've seen Core X will be familiar with this idea of doing some sort of V-sit. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's harder when you're doing it so controlled and deliberate as that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so hip strength, hard day. Here we go. These are new exercises, folks.
Yeah, so this one, if you notice, he's in an unstable plane by dropping into that split squat, but then he's stretching the hip flexor by leaning towards that front leg. So it's also serving as a flexibility unit to some of your primary muscles. This one with the twist, he's moving in that sagittal plane. You want to keep that back stable, and it's just teaching a little bit more of that torso rotation.
Great. And what cues would you use here for the straight leg deadlift?
So I don't want the pelvis to rock out. You could see his left hip kind of does that a little bit. You want to go down as far as your hamstring will allow, keeping your body in that straight line. So you'll feel more of a stretch on the posterior part of your leg, but you still want to maintain good pelvic control.
Is this one the inchworm? Is it fair to say that this is one of their least favorite because it's hard?
Yeah, I think they like the idea of it kind of feels good on the hamstring, even though it's still a stretch. Just like this one would be. This one's more challenging than it looks because to maintain good control of the movement, you have to contract the abdominals at the entire time.
Great. Yeah, and a lot of people have seen bird dogs just with the legs and the arms out, but not that movement to the side.
Hmm.
And then why are we holding at the top for 5 or 10 seconds for this last rep on the hip bridge?
So now that you've cued the glute to fire or activate, then you want to train some of the endurance component of those stabilizers contracting the entire time.
And then this one, you're challenging hamstring in the insertion into the glute.
Yeah, it's an eccentric load to the hamstring while still maintaining core and glute control.
Okay, folks, hip mobility. Hip mobility, I know you know it's important, and a lot of these you've seen before. You've seen Iron Cross.
Yeah, so this is it's pelvic rotation on the torso. You're letting gravity kind of take you to where the motion at your hip will allow. You're not trying to force the motion. This one, the goal, maintain contact with your lower back into the ground the whole time while you're moving the leg up and down. You don't want to feel a pop at the front of the hip. If you feel a pop at the front of the hip, usually it's indicative that you're letting that lower back relax a little bit with the motion. Same thing with this. Nice, slow control of the leg going up and down, maintaining contact with the lower back the entire time.
Great. And this is an athlete who, would you say his strength and mobility is what, in the 80th or 90th percentile of who you work with?
For his,
Or maybe a little lower?
yeah, his strength is good, but his mobility is poor. Which, I mean, he's a miler, so you can see where he has a lot of tension just based on some of the power output that he has to generate.
Yeah, and folks, you've seen these fire hydrants. One thing I think is great here. Look how nice those angles are. Knee is right under the hip there. That's at 90-degree angle.
Yeah, and same here. You're not trying to really torque the lower back. You're just going up with what the knee and the hip will allow. You're activating the posterior chain in order to do the movement. And it also serves as a good hip flexor stretch on the front part of the body as well.
Great. Well, folks,
This will be your favorite one.
is it
This one feels really good.
log rolls? Okay. What's the idea with this upper body? We'll have two exercises here.
Yeah, we're trying to increase thoracic spine extension, opening up also the abdominal wall. There's a lot of studies that show with an anterior forward rolled shoulder position, it actually decreases respiratory efficiency. So we're trying to improve the overall respiratory mechanics.
All right, Dr. Hansen, thank you, and we'll see you again for phase 4.
Yeah, thanks, guys.